How's it going, Star Seekers? My name's GotCake, and welcome once again to another Switch Deals video for this first week in September, where I pick 5 games from the eShop priced at under £1 Euro, provide a bit of a mini review for the games, and attempt to answer that crucial question, are they worth £1? Now there are a bunch of sales going on right now and I'm expecting this month to be an interesting one, so if you want to be notified of future videos like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now let's get started. So first up we have an action platformer that goes by the name of Venture Kid, whose 8-bit visuals and HUD aesthetics reminded me a lot of Mega Man. In fact, Venture Kid also plays a lot like Mega Man, albeit a much easier version of the game. So you play as Andy, a guy whose girlfriend is scared of some Russian sounding bloke called Teklov after he blew her up a bit. So Andy sets off to put an end to Teklov's bullshit, and a nice gilet wearing pirate tools him up with a gun to blast the baddies with. So the game has 4 different modes, the first of which is called Classic, which is the standard game mode where you have to beat each level in turn. So the game's controls are pretty standard. Movement is done with the left thumbstick or D-pad, we can jump with B or A, and shoot with Y or X. Hearts at the top of the screen represent our health, and lost health can be recovered by picking up hearts found in levels or as drops from enemies. So you basically work your way through levels, blasting enemies with your balls, collecting the balls that they drop, as well as other balls scattered around the level. Now all these balls are actually the game's currency, which can be spent in the shop to purchase additional health, energy and lives. So levels in the game each have a different theme, and you find plenty of the usual standard platformer mechanics, such as blocks that crumble when you stand on them, spikes which fall from the ceilings, and fireballs spitting lava. For the most part, I found the game's platforming enjoyable and not overly challenging, but there are a couple of unique mechanics which are sprung on you out of the blue, like this minecart that you're supposed to jump from to reach this ledge, which unlike enemies doesn't respawn, or this Indiana Jones style boulder which comes out of nowhere to flatten your ass. Now many levels also feature secret areas or multiple routes to explore, and within these you can find additional pickups or secret collectible items. Each level also contains their own unique enemies, and there's some decent variety here, though there are a few enemies that appear in multiple levels. At the end of the level you face off against a boss, and much like the Mega Man games, these bosses have unique attack patterns which they cycle through, and to beat them you simply need to reduce the health to 0. After beating a level, Pop-Up Pirate then appears again to give you a new gadget, and these include things such as a boomerang which can be used to grab out of reach objects, and a rocket which actually seemed pretty useless due to it firing up at an angle. Now each of these gadgets requires power to use, and additional power can be dropped from enemies found within levels or bought from the shop. In addition to Classic mode, there is an Adventure mode which allows you to tackle levels in any order, and a survival mode which sees you climbing through multiple levels on a single health bar. There's also a secret mode which I'll leave as a surprise, basically because I didn't actually unlock it. So do I think Venture Kid is worth £1? I'm gonna say yes on this one. As a platformer, Venture Kid is pretty decent, if not a little generic. The controls are tight, and gameplay difficulty is pretty tame and feels like it'd be accessible to even novice gamers. The sale on Venture Kid ends on the 17th of September in all regions. So our next game is not actually one that's on sale, but it's under £1 and it looks interesting enough to give it a go. Maddening Euphoria is an endless runner of sorts, though its gameplay is probably the most unique endless runner I've ever played. So I'll start by saying that the repeating diamond visuals, whilst slightly hypnotic, can screw with your eyes a little. Luckily you can tone them right down or turn them off completely in the options menu, but if you choose to leave them on, there's also a ton of different colour schemes available. So the game features a few different modes, all of which are based around the same gameplay dynamics. Starting with the standard mode, we see our character on top of the circle, and the game begins when we start to move. So basically, you have to continually run to the left whilst being chased by a wall which rotates its way around the circle towards you. Now what makes things interesting is that the level is procedurally generated ahead of you on the other side of the wall. So the further ahead of the wall that you get, the less time you get to react to new obstructions or obstacles. These include things such as spikes which kill you if you touch them, pools of goo which slow your movement speed, springboards which bounce you into the air, and bottomless pits which instantly result in death. Now staying close to the pursuing wall builds a circle meter, and when it's full you get a second wind, increasing your movement speed for a short time. Now this also generates a multicoloured triangle which when collected fills a letter of the words Euphoria. I wasn't actually good enough at the game to find out what happens when you fully fill the word, so that's going to have to be a surprise I'll leave up to you fine chaps to find out. Now, Maddening Euphoria isn't the easiest of endless runners, and this is primarily due to how jumping affects the game's visuals. The higher you jump, the smaller the landscape becomes, and this can be a major issue when you bounce off springboards, as you're literally unable to see anything. I thought this single mechanic really had a detrimental effect on gameplay, as it can instantly end your run when a pit appears out of nowhere. I do really wish that there was an option to turn the visual zooming off, as it would make the game a much more enjoyable experience, or even making the visuals a little larger would help, as there's so much unused space. So the standard game mode just challenges you to survive for as long as possible. The other game modes include challenge mode, which features 155 different objectives for you to complete, ranging from incredibly easy challenges such as surviving for 7 seconds or gaining a second wind, to literally impossible challenges like activating Euphoria in under 48 seconds, or surviving for a whole hour. We also have Pogo mode, which sees you constantly jumping through a level, Fast Wall, where the wall is fast, No Baxes, where you're unable to move left and instead continually run to the right, unable to stop or slow down, and Double Speed, which makes everything twice as fast, including you. So I personally thought Maddening Euphoria put a great spin on the traditional endless runner game. I liked its minimalistic visuals and the game's music was also catchy, but for me the visual zooming really ruined the gameplay experience by making it way too unpredictable. So for this reason I'm reluctant to give the game a thumbs up, but it could be worth a quid if you can get past the issues that I've mentioned. Our third game is one that I bought a while back but never actually got round to playing. Neverout is a first person puzzle game which sees you making your way through rooms filled with spike pits, fields of electricity which fry you, and big metal blocks which crush you. Now the game very much reminds me of a movie called Cube, where the characters were trapped in a cube full of identical rooms filled with traps. The goal in Neverout follows a very similar premise. In each room you need to make your way to the exit door found on one of the walls. Now your movement is restricted, so you can only move in straight lines following the squares on the floors, and you're able to rotate the room by walking towards a wall. Now the opening rooms introduce you to each of the game's mechanics. First we have blocks which are affected by gravity and can be moved around by rotating the room. And the majority of puzzles require us to manoeuvre these blocks into certain positions to reach the exit door. Next we have electricity fields and spike pits which kill you if you touch them or fall into them. And finally we have teleporters which transport your character between two different locations in a room. Now after completing the initial 20 introductory rooms, you end up in this hub room which gives you 4 different sets of levels to select from. Each set contains 15 levels which focus in on a particular gameplay mechanic. Now in all I thought the developers did a good job with giving each of the game's puzzles a unique solution. Whilst I didn't find any of the game's puzzles to be massively challenging, they were still enjoyable nonetheless, and the key to completing them all is to have good spatial awareness of the different objects in the room and how rotating the room affects them. Now I don't really want to say anything more about the game's puzzles to avoid spoilers, but what I will say is to beat the game you simply need to complete all 4 sets of puzzles to open the final door in the hub room, which in total gives you 80 puzzles to solve to complete the game. I'll also say that I really enjoyed Neverout, so much so that I actually completed the whole game in one sitting. So with all things considered, Neverout gets a definite thumbs up from me. It's a great little puzzler which I think is well worth a quid. The game's sale ends on the 17th of September in the UK and EU, and the 15th of September in the US. So our penultimate game is called Conduct Together, a cute little puzzler which sees you directing trains full of passengers between stations by switching tracks and stopping and starting the movement to avoid collisions with other trains or vehicles. Now the game begins easy by teaching you the basics. Each train is assigned either the A, B, X or Y button, and you can start and stop the train's movement by pressing the corresponding button. Switchable segments of the tracks are assigned a D-pad direction, and of course pushing a direction switches the track. So the premise of the game is simple. You direct a train to a station, it picks up passengers of a specific colour, and then you direct the train to another station which matches the colours of the passengers. Now trains can only carry one single colour of passengers at a time, and to complete a level you just need to drop off a specific number of passengers indicated by the number in the top left before the timer beside it runs out. Now you get a star rating between 1 and 3 stars depending on how fast you manage to do this, and you also earn coins from completing levels which you spend to unlock additional regions and levels. You also earn bonus gifts for completing a whole region which gives you new types of trains. Now the game becomes progressively more challenging as more trains, station colours and track switches are added, and completing levels solo requires a great deal of hand-eye coordination. I often found my fingers getting confused and ended up switching the wrong tracks or starting and stopping the wrong trains, which more often than not resulted in trains colliding and my game being ended. Luckily you also have a slow motion ability you can activate which can help when things get a little manic. Now one great thing about Conduct Together is that up to 4 people can play cooperatively, each having full control over the train and track segments, though this presents a whole different challenge in the form of role assignment and teamwork. If like me though you have no friends and you're still really struggling, you can turn down the game's difficulty which reduces train movement speed giving you more time to think, and you can also turn on unlimited slow motion. So I found Conduct Together to be a really fun but challenging experience, and I definitely think it's worth £1, especially if you've got mates to play it with. The game's sale ends on the 10th of September in all regions. Our final game is VSR, or Void Space Racer to give it its full title. It's a space-based racing game where you go up against 7 other racers and have to pilot a ship through coloured rings which form the racetrack. Now the game has 3 modes, but levels in time trial mode are all locked until you beat them in single race mode, and the tracks in single race mode require you to come in first place before you can unlock the next track. Now before racing you get to select a colour scheme and one of 3 ships, 2 of which are locked to start with, but from what I can tell the difference between the ships is purely aesthetics. So I'll say right away that racing in VSR is unlike any racer I've ever played before, and takes a little bit of getting used to say the least. As you set off, your engines propel you forward towards the first ring, but when you try to turn you retain a lot of your forward momentum as there's no friction in space, so you have to get used to beginning your turn as you approach the ring and then using your thrusters to propel you towards the next ring. Now to begin with you'll be all over the track as you struggle to maintain control, the visuals will probably disorientate you, and like me you'll no doubt end up in last place for your first few races. But I really do advise you stick at it, as you begin to get a feel for the racing and it starts to feel much more natural. You'll learn how to use the small circle marker in the centre of the screen which indicates your direction of travel, how and when to use your brakes to tighten your turns up, and how the R and L buttons can be used to rotate your ship, allowing you to line up with rings more easily. Now once I got the hang of things I was able to smash through each race in first place, at least on easy difficulty, and though I had my doubts when I first started playing the game, I actually really enjoyed the racing experience VSR has to offer. So once you've worked your way through the single races and you're happy with the controls, you can then give time trials a go where you can race for the best time on global leaderboards. Though to get a decent time you're going to have to nail every corner and make sure to hit every ring to avoid time penalties. Now the game also features offline multiplayer for up to 2 players, though it may be a little tough to play in split screen unless you've got a decent sized TV. So is VSR worth £1? I'm gonna say yes. It certainly offers a very unique racing experience that can't really be described very well with words, and I definitely recommend giving it a go if you're looking for something different. The game's sale ends on the 20th of September in the UK and EU, and the 11th of September in the US. So that's it for another week, Starseekers. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this deals video, and let me know in the comments section below if you're going to be grabbing any of the games that I've covered. As always, subscribe for future Switch content and reviews, and jump onto the Starseekers Discord where I'm always up for a chat. For now though, I just want to say thanks once again for watching, and until next time, game on.